Thank you for listening to this PYA webinar recast. PYA is pleased to offer this alternative way to access our thought leadership. This is a recording of a previously delivered webinar. The information is accurate as of the date of the original event. The video recording, slides, and associated material for this and all PYA webinars are available on our website at pyapc.com. This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as legal advice or an official opinion. Welcome to today's webinar, a part of PYA's commitment to lifelong learning and thought leadership. We understand the importance of clear, relevant, and timely information in the industries we serve. So PYA offers a wide variety of webinars, white papers, articles, checklists, and other tools. Subscribe to our newsletters, follow us on social media, and check out our PYA webinar recast series wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find all of this and previous webinars for free at pyapc.com. For today's webinar, you may submit questions through the control panel. After the webinar, you will receive an email with a recording of this webinar session. Please stay on the line after the webinar to complete a short survey and post any questions you may have. Thank you so much for joining us. And here is today's presenter, Barry Mathis.
Thank you for that introduction. I am Barry Mathis. I am a principal with PYA. I lead our IT advisory and consulting program at the firm, and I am excited once again to be talking to you about something that seems to be in the news a lot and on everybody's mind, and that's cybersecurity. We're going to talk about the landscape of cybersecurity, what's going on in the news, what you may or may not be aware of, and some of the things going in the background. And then maybe if you're thinking about cybersecurity, you're asking the question, are we doing the right thing? If we've not started, where would we start? Hopefully you've started, but we're going to make the assumption that maybe you want to go back and check and see that you're doing the right things. We take for granted sometimes that we've been focused on cybersecurity for quite some time now, but yet we still see a lot of breaches and things that are happening. So we're going to talk about that and how it impacts and affects you. We're going to talk about the future, what we see happening in the cybersecurity space. So just a few topics. We're going to spend about the next 45, 50 minutes together about this. So let's go ahead and get started. A piece about my background. I've been very blessed to have been a chief information officer for a number of hospitals, chief technology officer for a number of hospitals, IT compliance officer, IT consultant, IT auditor for one of the largest healthcare systems in the country. I've been a white hat hacker for a number of years, have some nice credits to my name around that. We can cover those in other presentations. But to say that I've seen a lot of things is an understatement. But I'm never amazed at what still comes our way. And I've got a dear friend, former FBI supervisory agent in charge of cybersecurity in Nashville, Scott Agenbaum. Check out his blog. Just Google Scott Agenbaum, FBI, and you can see a lot of his videos. Wrote a book called The Secret to Cybersecurity. But one of the things I take away from Scott every time I talk to him is how simple fixing some of the cybersecurity issues that we have can be. It's some very basic things, and we're just not doing a good job at the basic things. And then we're going to focus a lot on reaction, because it seems today that's probably more important than even trying to prevent some things, and that's focused on how we're going to react to those. So let's get right into it. Cybersecurity in the news. Number one, change healthcare, right? Optum. We know that's going on. There's tons and tons of articles around it that you can read. Google that, and you can spend just hours and hours in reading around that. But for those who may not have seen some of the details around that, it happened around February the 22nd, Change Healthcare, which is, if you looked at the number of clients involved with that, the number of functions, this is a large enterprise, data-driven interoperability company with ties to clearinghouses, claims, pharmacies, all kinds of things. And when they were hacked, boy, the impact across the healthcare industry was just immense. So nationwide prescription processing, things all over impacted by that. And you might say, well, if it can happen to somebody like that, because let's take a moment and just reiterate, this is not some fly-by-night company. This is a well-run, invested company managing a lot of data, likely doing so many things right, but yet even they can be breached. Just shows you the bad actors really, they're coming at us from all different kinds of angles. The applications within Change Health, over 100 something applications they do are impacted by this. So even as late as February the 25th, which is beyond now. This is we've had some time. It's taken a long time for them to come back up, and those clients that are impacted, there's contingencies in place there. Let's talk about that for a moment. So for me, and I've been asked a couple of times, do you want to produce some thought leadership and articles around this particular breach, around cybersecurity? And I'm like, guys, this is so much more than just cybersecurity. The cybersecurity is an interesting piece of it. Don't get me wrong. And there are things that likely they are doing within their own walls, and I don't presume to know what they're doing. But again, well-run organization, likely they've circled the wagons, and they're absolutely doing everything they can to prevent this from happening and get things back up. But let's talk about our side of it, okay? And that is more than cybersecurity. It's about business contingency. So we talk about as auditors a lot. We ask for your disaster recovery procedures. We look at business contingency plans and what you're doing to test those. But in this case, when you're going through those risk analysis and you're looking at applications that contain sensitive data, PII or EPHI, you may want to start looking for sure the very particular functions that are relied on information technology, especially if that technology, by design, we're pushing outside of our organization for safety purposes, okay, for security. We're offloading that risk to someone else who's invested. But if that's the only link that we have to a critical business function, then what happens if they get hacked? That's what you're experiencing with Change Healthcare. So one of the things that we have to do a better job of in our industry is identifying those things and start, in my opinion, treating them like a utility. So if you're running any kind of a business where you're supporting the public in any form or fashion, especially in healthcare, much like banking or other industries, there are utilities that you have redundancy. So you can't run a business, you can't run a technology business, you can't run a financial business if you don't have power, if you don't have cooling for the facility, if you don't have telephones, all these things that are considered just absolute utilities. There are things inside our healthcare organization now tied to applications that should be considered utilities. And we should look at backing up those contingencies for those, just like we do for our water and our power that are utilities. A clearinghouse, for example, I've made several phone calls within our firm. One of the first things as soon as we heard about this, the echo went all the way through our firm. Do we have clients impacted by this? Should we call these folks? Find out, can we help you? What is going on that we can do that we can help? And what I found through some of my phone calls is I have clients within the firm that really aren't that impacted by it simply because they have some redundancy. They're not our only clearinghouse, right? And then I have some clients who say, look, we're not getting paid for a while. We know that. We're going after loans. We're leveraging our credit lines with banks because we know that being our only clearinghouse, we're simply not going to get paid. So my point is, with something like this breach, okay, it is much more than just cybersecurity. Mindful, cybersecurity is part of it. There are likely some things in there that's being lessons learned that could have been different. But the fact that you could absolutely prevent anything like this from happening, get rid of that notion, okay? There are so many factors involved here. You are much better off preparing for when it does happen than you are simply focused on preventing it from happening. And I think that's a fairly common thing in our industry, but it deserves repeating. Other things in the news, There's a particular term in the cybersecurity and cyber threat intelligence world known as advanced persistent threat groups, APTs. These are the groups of bad actors, and back in the day, when in the cybersecurity industry, that could just have been 8-9 years ago. They had a lot of nicknames, and by their nickname, you could probably tell if they were state backed and what maybe country they come from. For example, there was bears. You can figure that out. Dragons. Okay. And these are symbols, panda, right? These are symbols that kind of they took on as a representation of the nation that in some cases actually supported them and helped protect them. And then there got to be so many of those. So the organizations that track those and monitor those, like the FBI and the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, Homeland Security, all those, we gave them numbers: APT, Advanced Persistent Threat Groups, 1,200, or whatever the number may be. Well, APT 39 still has a bit of a mascot there, and they call themselves the Cozy Bear. And as you might imagine, with the bear, it is a Russian-backed state-acting group. Well, this group is now focused on responding to corporates' involvement with cloud computing. So they're very, very focused. They basically created a business model that says we're going to go after those that are cloud computing. And one of the things that they're focused on is that there are many, many people in healthcare, especially smaller healthcare organizations, physician practices, smaller practices, and even healthcare supporting organizations that may be small or startup, that are leveraging the financial and risk benefit of putting things into the cloud. But they're taking default settings because whether you know it or not, if just because you go to a Google Cloud, a Microsoft Cloud, or an Amazon Cloud, you have options for what you pay for. Okay. You can get the car with leather seats or no leather seats. You can get it with anti-lock brakes or no anti-lock brakes, all these sort of things. The most common mistake made is that you have a small IT department that can manage the server. So all you really need is a space for the servers, the applications on the servers to run, and guarantee that they're going to be up with some redundancy and they're protected from a firewall and those sort of things. The administration of the security around that, how you do your provisioning, deprovisioning, set up your security containers, whether or not you turn on multi-factor authentication, that's all up to the individual, the client. Now, there are packages that you can buy. It's more expensive, in which those cloud providers will manage all that for you as well. But most people going through that process will tend to lean towards, well, we can handle that. We've got an IT staff. We just need this. We just need to borrow the computer time, the space, and that sort of thing. Well, this APT 29 Cozy Bear, they've recognized that, and they've made that a bit of their target. And that is, we know we've got some people who are taking less than stellar control initiatives around those cloud-based offerings. So they're focused on that. They use old-timey techniques. I mean, I say old-timey. Techniques that we used in early 2000s, 20 years ago, 15 years ago. So it's called brute force attacking. And a brute force attack today is so much different. So if you go back to when I first started doing brute force attacks, we used something called Rainbow Cracker. It was on a forum, if you remember what those were. And the guy's forum, I think his name was Tim, posted this, and everybody could use the software. And it's essentially a piece of code that will just attack a portal, like you've gone to your bank or to your Instacart or to your Uber or whatever, and you had to put your ID and your password in, and it's outward facing. So your ID and your password delineates who you are going into that app, but everybody can access that app. Well, any application that's kind of available, so I can at least see the login screen. If there's certain controls not in place, then I can simply attack that over and over and over and over and over until I guess the password. That's a brute force. And back then, there's only so many tries. Today, with today's technology, and especially with AI and some things, we can attack that millions of times a second. So if you're using common phrases and things like that in your cloud, or you've by chance had default passwords left in some of your cloud settings, then you're an easy target. And this APT Cozy Bear, APT 29 Cozy Bear, they've recognized that, and they've targeted United Kingdom, United States, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. They have a business plan. And for those of us who kind of work in the what we call the cyber threat intelligence group, so you're looking on the dark web, we're watching these sort of things, we're listening to forums, we see this activity picking up. So APT 29 Cozy Pair, I think you're going to hear about them in the future. And again, using old-fashioned techniques, because sometimes we've forgotten about those. Another thing in the news, I was actually giving a presentation to a group a few weeks ago, and as part of my cyber threat intelligence work, I monitor some of the bad actors, kind of their clearinghouses, the tools that they use. So you may have a group that's an APT, but they use a particular tool, and then some of them are wrapped together. One of those that's kind of wrapped together is Lockbit. For those of us who've been in the cyber, we're very familiar with Lockbit 3.0. And it's essentially ransomware. It's a ransomware group. They have large campaigns. It's led by a couple of individuals. And I was showing this, I always show it on the screen because it's kind of like a wall of shame. I do a live kind of into the dark web and show these things. And I'm getting ready to show it to the audience. And all of a sudden I come up the screen. It says it's been seized by the FBI. The FBI says to Homeland Security, they've shut down the site. And I'm like, wow, this is another win. Much like Hive, which was another group, they shut them down. They've shut down Lockbit. That was a big deal because Lockbit's been out there for about 5 or so years, and they've just been running rampant. So that was shut down. Well, guess what? They're back up again. Reopen the store, different look into the dark space, and the person who kind of runs that is almost flippant in his comments back to the FBI. And I'm going to read this. I've got a little thing here to the side, so forgive me if I look away. But the representative from Lockbit said all FBI actions are aimed at destroying the reputation of my affiliate program. My demoralization. They want to leave me, and they want to have me leave and quit my job. They want to scare me because they can't find or eliminate me. And he goes on to say, I cannot be stopped. You can't even hope to stop me. As long as I'm alive, I will continue to do what I'm doing. He says it in a couple of paraphrase there. So he's actually throwing. Now, if you talk to the FBI or you talk to Homeland Security, they feel like this is a bit of posturing, that they have made a serious dent in this person's livelihood, and they have. But interesting how they got there. And one of the things that you need to know if you go through a cybersecurity event, okay, and you're either negotiating with the bad actors and you're trying to decide you need to bring the federal government in, you need to bring the FBI in, you need to bring CISA in there as well. For one reason, there are a lot of things they can offer you, such as it's kind of a reverse hack. And in this case, the FBI was able to exploit a weakness through a reverse hack that was happening to Lockbit. They had not patched a server with what's called PHP, but and his comment, which again just kind of shows you the human nature of these bad actors. They're not secret super spies. They're just people who have made a different decision in life and want to be evil versus good. But basically what he said was, yes, you hacked me. And the reason you did is I've been swimming in money for the last 5 years, and I just got lazy. I got complacent. And so therefore I was hacked. But he bounces back. I think Lockbit will be out there for a while. I think there's a little struggling on the ropes. I do agree with the FBI statements that there's a little posturing there, that he's quite embarrassed. That group's quite embarrassed as to what happened to them. It's no different than in my organization. I act as a bit of an IT security risk manager within our own organization. And my team knows if they catch me in a phishing email or something like that, it's a free steak dinner for me. So if you nail me, and what happens even as soon as yesterday, I called our CIO and I said, there's an email here. This thing's very fishy. I think you're trying to get that free steak dinner. And he said, no, it's legitimate. It's a workaround for something we got going on. So, but things like that, we'll get into that with testing. Things like that keep your posture up. Don't ever feel bad about questioning an email, okay, to your IT department, to your boss or whatever. You may very well be the one that saves your organization from a major event by simply questioning that email. But Lockbit, they're back. They've rebounded. FBI got them. Now they're coming back. We'll see what happens there. ConnectWise, for those of you who are not familiar, you can Google and look and see about what they do. But they're looking. There's a Screen Connect version with ConnectWise, and there are hackers that are aggressively right now. So if you are a user of ConnectWise, or you have anybody in your client folio or in your organization that uses ConnectWise, you can talk to your IT folks. They'll tell you. But there's a specific vulnerability that's listed in the National Vulnerability Database connected to ConnectWise, and it has to do with the Screen Connect. And the hackers have got onto that, and they're really wearing it out for those who aren't paying attention. So shout out to, if you have ConnectWise. It's, again, we're not throwing stones at the product, but every product that's out there, everything has vulnerabilities that eventually can be exploited. Well, here's one that's found to be exploited, and what I'm telling you through this seminar or through this webcast is take a look and see if you're using ConnectWise. If you are, make sure it's patched, because they do have a patch for it that'll shut these hackers down. But it is one of the things that's really making the rounds in the dark web right now. People sharing information, much like we do in business. The bad actors share that information on the dark web. So if you have ConnectWise, take a look at that. The other thing that's happening, and I want to say it's kind of in the cybersecurity, certainly in the IT risk management space, likely going to impact you. Health and Human Services, Office of Civil Rights, specifically Health and Human Services, they're telling Congress right now that they need more money for HIPAA work. Okay, so loosely related to cybersecurity, but I figure while I've got your attention, let me share this with you. The breach figures for 2023 next year, that's coming out for 2023, are likely going to be worse than what we've seen in 2022. But almost 250,000 people, I think, impacted. OCR, I think they received almost 64,000 reports of breaches in 22. 500 exploited breaches and exploitations, 250,000 individuals, and that's just on the ones that they're investigating. That doesn't include ones that may not have been reported. Again, people are on their own recognizance of that. You're either compliant or you're not. But we expect the numbers in 23 to be a lot higher. The point being, what OCR and HHS are saying is, a few years ago we started doing preemptive audits around this to ensure people are doing what we're doing. One of the things that they found out was that even some of the basic stuff, completing a security risk analysis, wasn't being done. And if it was being done, it wasn't being done correctly. And by the way, if you want to know what correctly is, they've got guidance out there. You can look at the National Institute of Standards and Technology special publication 800-30. If you have a conversation with OCR, they're going to point you to that and say, look, we've told you this is what we expect in a risk analysis. So it doesn't matter what that company's doing or what that company's doing and saying, hey, it's a risk analysis. You can do more, but you can't do less. So check out that special publication 800-30 if you want to know what OCR expects in that. But people weren't even doing that. So they're asking Congress, we need more money. Bottom line on that, what's the punchline? I think in the future you're going to see some more audits around this, and cybersecurity and what you're doing around cybersecurity is going to be one of the focuses based on some of these breaches that are going on in the past and right now. So just get prepared. I think what's coming is some more oversight, proactive audits. Now, how they're going to do it, random or otherwise, or line us up by revenue and start at the top, I don't know. But I absolutely think that that's coming in the future. It's going to be in 24, likely not, but down the road in 25 possibly. So that's kind of some things in the news, and this stuff is in the last week or so. So we'll just share that with you. Let's talk about the landscape itself in cybersecurity. And when I started this presentation, I thought the landscape, it's about navigation through the landscape. Now I think it's the landscape is blowing up around us, and the navigation of that landscape is more difficult than it's been in the past. But the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, you heard me mention them in a couple of statements before. Let's talk about that for a minute. They started in 2019. And this is one area, along with the FBI, that I think is really, really making an impact in the healthcare organization and helping us do what we need to do. There's a lot of your tax dollars involved in CISA, the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Okay, they get security in there twice. That's how important it is. And they've got 10 regions. If you don't know what your region is, you can just Google that, CISA regions, and you'll find out what your region is. Each region has a representative, and those representatives can point you to lots of free tools, tabletop exercises. You can download links to even the new current cybersecurity, the volunteer cybersecurity goals that's been set by HHS. All this stuff is in there, and you can see that from their website. It's a very well done set of tools that you can use. So if you're not familiar with CISA, get familiar with CISA. I think very much that you're going to like that. Okay. The next thing around that is there's, besides the resources that they have on their website and things you can read, you can actually schedule that CISA representative to come into your organization, or you can go and participate. A lot of them are organizing larger tabletop exercises around, cyber incidents or disaster recovery, things like that. So besides just accessing the tools on the web, you can actually interact with these. And I recommend you do. Everyone that I've met has just been extremely helpful. And very nice in what they're doing. There's no arrogance about them at all. And for those, in a market where we're selling our services, here it is free, and you would think that there's, kind of a yin and yang there, and it's really not. They recognize that there's professionals out there, and what they try to do is augment those for those who may not be able to afford the full services that we're doing. So I think it's a great thing. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Learn more about it. If you have any questions, call me. I'm happy to put you in touch with your regional representative. I've done that several times, and it's always turned out well. The next one is, again, I mentioned the National Institute of Standards and Technology. For those of us who work in this space all the time, we're very familiar with what that is. We depend on a lot of their guidance, even though it's not necessarily regulatory. There's a lot of regulatory that points to that as best practice and guidance. And they have produced the second version, the updated version of the cybersecurity framework. There's two things about this that I like. One, it gives some more specific controls in around for smaller organizations, and I love that about it. But there's another layer to it, and they have a maturity model that goes along with it now that I really like. So for those of us who've been auditors for a while, and we like COBIT security modeling and or maturity modeling, or ITIL's maturity modeling. Well, now cybersecurity framework with NIST has its own maturity modeling. So check that out. It's very very helpful, I think. So the updated framework adds another core element around the cybersecurity and some governance. So governance being recognized being a very important part of it, and I agree. You need to have people involved. It's not an IT thing. So let me say that cybersecurity is not an IT thing. Not. It is an all of us thing. And if you look at the breaches that occur, far more occur at the keyboard than at the firewall. Okay. So there's some nice governance programs within this new NIST framework that I think you could take advantage of. I highly recommend you take a look at it. Incidents reporting and the Critical Infrastructure Act. Just about every time I get a chance to talk about this in terms of what's going on in the landscape right now, I remind everybody that in 2022 we had legislation that was put into public rulemaking and is likely going to come out in a final version here very soon, and it's the incident reporting. So if you're considered critical infrastructure, if you're in healthcare, just about everything we're doing is considered critical infrastructure. No longer are you going to have the luxury of simply waiting before you report either a cybersecurity event or the payment of a ransom. You're going to be required to do their incidents have to be reported under this new rule 72 hours from the time that you know you have a cybersecurity incident. Now, granted, you're working with your attorneys. There's the public rulemaking. The conversation is, well, when do we define that we've had an event? And we work with teams all the time, and one of the things that we recommend that is part of our outsourced IT risk management program called Overwatch. If you're an Overwatch client, one of the first things that we'll do is do a security profile. Who's your FBI local? Who's your communications? Who's your legal? Do you have legal that has the experience? You build that so in your incident response, you've got the right team that's working on that. And in doing so, you kind of have legal involved deciding when the incident's there. So there's discussion around that. But Once an incident's known, you have 72 hours to report it. And by the way, if your entire system is shut down, right, you're probably not going to have weeks to decide, hey, I think we may or may not have had an incident. No, you've had an incident. Okay. So 72 hours to report that. And then if you're paying a ransom, you have 24 hours to report that. Now, both of these are reportable to CISA. That, again, that's the agency we just talked about. So they're the recipient of those reports. Now, they'll distribute those, likely to the FBI and others that may be involved, but the report will, in fact, go to CISA. So that's the Cyber Incident Reporting and Critical Infrastructure Act. That's something that if you don't know what's out there, do a little research on it, because you are going to have to apply or abide by that once it's in its final state. The other one, and it's coming from that same federal arm, it's the state and local cybersecurity grant program. So we're talking about the landscape. This is a very positive thing. Now, if you're a giant organization, or you're not state and local, then you go grab a cup of coffee. We get it. But if you're a tribal, or state or local institution, you want to check out what's called the SLCGP. Okay, it is the State and Local Cybersecurity Grant Program. Now, it's been going on for a little bit, but there's still money. I think about $300 million in 2024 and another $100 million for 2025. And you can apply for these grants online, and it's to help those who are trying to beef up that posture. Maybe it's replacing equipment, maybe it's training, maybe it's paying for outside consultants, whatever it is. But there's grant opportunities in this state and local cybersecurity grant program. So if you're a tribal or a state or local, all those that are eligible, you go look at that page. If you don't know that you're eligible, if you think you may be, go look and see. The eligibility is clearly laid out on the page, but you're going to want to check that out. So that's kind of what's in the news. That's kind of what's happening, on the landscape. And we could expand both of those. We could talk for days about the news. We could talk for days about other interesting things in the landscape. But let's get to some very important things about elevating your cybersecurity risk management, things that you can do. So we're going to break them down. There's no particular order. They're in the order in which I thought about them as I was putting this together. But the first thing that came to my mind was multi-factor authentication. Now, if you're a technologist or you've been around compliance in IT for a while, we could say MFA. You know what we're talking about, multi-factor authentication. In your case, if you're not part of the industry, but you're familiar with it, because it's that thing you have to do before you sign into your banking app or any other app, and hopefully the app that the application, the EMR or whatever application it is you use at work. And that is, you put in your ID and your password, and then you have to receive something or give it something back, a token. It sends your phone a number, and you put that number in, whatever it is. That second thing you do is called the second factor. It's at least a two-factor. And you can have many factors. I know some organizations that have as many as 3 and 4 factors. Most of those are 3-letter agencies. But the fact is, it's not just an ID and a password. Now, why is that important? Okay, many people talk about it, and a lot of people say, why is multi-factor all that important? When we go back to the beginning of this conversation, where we're pushing a lot of things to the cloud, and we have bad actors who understand that and are trying to take advantage of that. So what they know is, in many of your core systems, it's going to be available if you simply know the URL to go for the ID and the password. So in a typical campaign from a bad actor is, I'm going to use social engineering, brute force, all kinds of techniques to simply I just want your ID and your password into your email system. And then once I get from your email, then I can try, if that email is tied into Active Directory for Microsoft, then I can use that to see what credentials you have. And maybe I can get access to a server that you've got access to, and I can launch a ransomware and do a lot of damage. Okay. So with multi-factor authentication, that outward facing, I put in my ID and I put in my password. So in a campaign, I've managed to gather, and we do this as part of our testing for our clients, is I've managed to either social engineer through an email phishing campaign. I have your ID and a password. You gave it to me. You thought I was IT, and you gave me that because some message told you need to re-verify that. Now I have it. It's mine. I'm the bad actor, but I'm not doing anything with it. I'm just going to sit for a little bit. Okay. One of the first things I'm going to do once I decide to act on it is I'm going to go to the websites that I know you go to get access to these corporate and critical systems that are now in the cloud, and I'm going to put in your ID and your password. Without two-factor authentication, I'm in. I own it. It's mine. I can even go out there likely and change the password if I want to and lock you out. But with two-factor, I put in my ID, I put in my password, and then the system sends a request for the second authentication. Okay, dual factor authentication. As the bad actor, I don't have that. I don't have your phone. I don't have access to another email. I don't have access to whatever token it is. So I'm stopped. Even though I have your ID and I have your password, I can't go any further. So that's why multi-factor authentication is extremely important, because there are a lot of people that have given up their ID and passwords and their organization hasn't felt the impact of it simply because that organization has turned on multi-factor authentication. Now, the reason by far that we find out people aren't using multi-factor authentication is the aggravation it is to their users. Well, for us to turn on MFA, our physicians aren't going to be happy. Our nurses aren't going to be happy. The board members aren't going to be happy. You got to get rid of that. They have to be on board. If you don't have 2FA turned on, if you don't have at least two factors, then you are the next victim. All right. It's just a matter of time. It will absolutely save you that critical mass event that's going to happen because somebody somewhere is going to give up their credentials. It is so easy to do. It is so easy for a hacker to get. It's just too simple. All you have to do is turn on 2FA. Okay, multi-factor authentication, we call it. Get that turned on. Monitoring and logging. One of the things, well, for two reasons. One, you want to monitor what's going in and you want to react to that. And there's all kind of tools now. There's a whole list of vendors out there that can help you with your monitoring. You can Google network monitoring and just get inundated with those. And we don't necessarily promote vendors ourselves, but we see a lot of the common ones that are out there. And what we see is in some smaller organizations or even some larger ones, the monitoring's flipped on, but nobody's monitoring the monitoring. There's logs coming out of it, but nobody's reviewing the logs. Well, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If you're spending all the money for the monitoring itself is simply going to, identify issues that need to be dealt with. Now, it may block certain things. Like I say, I don't want to receive any network packets coming from China. Anything from China, turn it off. Anything from Russia, turn it off. It can do that for you. But not everything comes that way. For example, when I go into the dark web to look at cyber threat intelligence, the site that I'm looking at doesn't see me as United States because I'm hopping through Germany, France, and you can. So if they're not blocking that one, then So the bad actor may be coming into the United States, hopping around, and it looks like it's coming from the United States, not from that particular region. So simply blocking those is not you have to monitor the activity that's going on, pay attention to the flags and get it done. The other part of it is logging. And if you work with the FBI at all, by the way, one of the things that we do is we want you to get to know who your field agent local and who your regional agents are, special agent in charge. You're looking for the special agent in charge of the cybersecurity investigation of whatever region you're in. They will actually send you a document that they would expect. So if you call them today and they're going to come on site and say 45 minutes, if you're local enough to them because you've got a breach, they're going to send you in advance. These are the things we need to see. Get that in advance. It's one of the things that we try to do with our incident profiles. Find out all that stuff. One of the things they're going to ask for is the logging. Okay. And if you don't have logging turned on, and I don't just mean the network, for example, your Microsoft 365, there's an option to turn logging off and logging on for Microsoft 365. If you have logging turned off and you have some kind of an email breach, you have nothing to show that there was an exfiltration. What that means is, I know somebody's email was compromised. I know they have Excel files with thousands of patients in their email, but I can't tell if anybody got those. So the assumption is you have to assume they did. But if your logging's turned on, I can show definitively my logging's on. And even though Barry had his email hacked and he has an Excel file with 2,000 patient records in it that he shouldn't have, I can show that it never left my organization. So my attorneys can defend that I did not have an exposure. If you have logging turned off, you don't have that privilege. So make sure logging's turned on across the board, whatever the applications are. Your EMR 365, that's part of your risk analysis, risk management, is to look for those. And again, back to the basics, complete a security risk analysis, follow NIST 800-30. If you want to elevate it and go NIST 800-53, which is more of a federal look at that, you're happy to do so, but make sure you hit all the things in -30 because in a desk audit from OCR HHS, they're going to see that information. Get that done. There's no reason to not have that done. Mitigate those issues. There's a term out there called systemic noncompliance. So if you want to elevate your IT risk management profile, make sure you don't have that going on. And we all know what that is. If you're an IT professional, you're very familiar with this. And that is, we've identified these servers that need to be replaced. We've identified these patches need to happen. We identified them 2 years ago. We still haven't done it. And the reasons vary. It's a legacy system that we can't touch. If we patch it, the software vendor won't support it. Then your attorneys need to get a hold of that software vendor and say, hey, listen, if it's not patched, you're gone. Okay. And by the way, if we have a breach because of that, you're gone in a different way. We're gonna sue over this sort of thing. Whatever you have to do, you can't let those stuff go untouched. Okay. So systemic noncompliance is something you don't want to be a part of. It basically says we're negligent in what we're doing. We've not touched it in years. We know it's there. We've done the risk analysis. We're well informed of what's going on. We simply haven't made the right decision to correct it. So mitigate those known issues. You need to get that done. We talk about patching. Patch servers and infrastructure, not just your application servers, but there's infrastructure. Everything you have that's electronic, get used to this. Everything you have that's electronic has an end of life. Just like that first iPhone you ever bought. I have every iPhone I've ever owned. It's kind of a cool collection. And I go back to that tiny little thing I bought, how cool that was. Obsolete as it is. Back then, it was the thing. Okay. Same thing for your computer. Same thing for your network routers, your Cisco equipment, whatever routers you happen to have in place. That is going to have an end of life. And until it has its end of life, they're going to patch it for you because it's going to have vulnerabilities. It's just inevitable. Make sure that kind of stuff is going on. Test and train. So testing primarily refers to your contingency and disaster recovery, but I'm going to shift it for this purpose over to the cybersecurity. Test your incident reaction. You should have a clear incident reaction profile. Okay, a plan of what's going to happen if we get a major breach. Okay, the first person to call. One of the very important things is who in your organization is organizing the breach response. Who has the authority in your organization to say, we need to get these people together, we think we had a breach? It can't be IT. For heaven's sakes, don't let it be IT. We react a different way than, say, a communications company. There's a lot of people that have exacerbated their event simply by talking about it too much outside and inside. It didn't need to happen. Have a plan, have communication involved, have legal there quickly. Make sure the federal government's involved. If it's a ransom, it's associated that you're paying it. Get the FBI and CISA involved in that. Get your risk manager compliance. Get your CEO. Everybody needs to be involved in an incident. It's not an IT issue, right? It's an us issue. And test it out. Do what we call tabletop exercises. Take your plan, sit around the table, talk about it, discover what needs to change, and then make those changes. Can't tell you how many times I've seen somebody say, yes, we've tested our plan. Well, what did you discover? Well, we didn't have this. We didn't have this. Well, did you fix that? Well, we're getting around to it. Hello? The whole reason you test something is to fix where it failed. If you find faults in it, fix them quickly. This is what's going to keep you out of the newspaper. And then train your staff. You cannot train enough. It used to be, and unfortunately still is for some organizations, they'll train their staff once a year, twice if you're hired in that year. When you come on board, you get trained. There's a 20-minute scenario that you watch and you take a little test. You say, I know all about cybersecurity and HIPAA now. No. Okay, that gets you introduced to it. But you should be training them and testing them. Email phishing tests. You should be testing who's clicking what. You should be retraining them, whatever you have to do. It's the easiest way for a bad actor or a white hat to get into your organizations in an email. By far the easiest. It's like the doorknob on a door. Just turn it and go in, okay? You should be testing that continuously. It's not a once a quarter thing. It's a continuous test. Make sure you're testing and training. Train. Talk. Discuss. Get that out there. That's what's going to keep you out of the newspaper. Another one seems very simple: encrypt devices. The OCR, Office for Civil Rights, HHS, the OIG under investigations. If you have a breach or you have some kind of CID or civil investigation that's going on, one of the things you're going to look for is if an unencrypted device is involved. And if an unencrypted device was involved, just, call the bank, get a check, it's blank, start writing the numbers, get your attorneys to negotiate because you're going to get hit. There's no excuse for an unencrypted device. It comes with the operating system, okay? It comes with the device. You can turn on encryption. So there's really no good reason not having things. Now, if you get into the server category, database, there's the question around encryption for data at rest. If you have a cold server sitting in storage, if you have a disk sitting in storage or solid state sitting in storage and it's not actively being monitored, it ought to be encrypted. If you have an active database, there's some built-in encryption within the process. It's usually what we call original equipment manufacturer, OEM. It's how the tables are used. So if somebody accesses it, they don't have the ID, it's somewhat encrypted. But if that's not active, it should be encrypted. So just encrypt your devices. Reduce a local data presence. Now, what that means is we still have organizations that even their legacy system may be sitting in a closet somewhere under a desk. They're putting far too many things local and trying to manage that themselves. Now, if you have the money to invest in it and you're protecting it correctly, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not telling you should push everything out to the cloud, but you should look at your footprint and see if you cannot afford to keep it up and you don't have the staff to keep it patched, then for goodness sakes, pay somebody a little bit of money, let them do it for you, because it is critical that you keep the patches done, you keep the backups done, you can respond to an event around your systems. Okay, so reducing a local presence of data can help you in the long run. Build and test contingencies. So besides just testing the prevention piece, test your contingencies. We talked about that in the very beginning. One of the big things with Change Healthcare is we had a lot of people who simply had, that's my only clearinghouse. Well, if that's your only clearinghouse and it's down, you're done. It's just like if you ran a restaurant and you've only got one source of gas for your burners and your stoves, and that source gets cut, well, your restaurant's shut down until that gas comes back. All right. Or you've got a contingency that says, in the event the gas gets turned off, we have electronic stoves we can pull out of the closet and we can continue to service our customers. It takes a little longer to cook it, but we can get it in there with the electronic stoves instead of the gas. Have contingencies in place. Test those contingencies. And in some cases, more so than just a tabletop, you need to know if when you flip the switch, the light's going to come on. Okay. So test your contingencies. You can get your vendors involved with those. When you're negotiating your contract, see if there's language in there that allows your vendor to help you test those contingencies. Okay. Do some forethought as you're negotiating new contracts and re-up. Get some testing scenarios in there so your vendor can help you test the contingencies. Find out what they're doing. Ask them the question. What if what happened to Change Healthcare happens to you? How are you preventing that? Now, some of them are going to be very reluctant to tell you the details, but at the very least, they should tell you whether or not they've been through a SOC 2 assessment, it's a Service Organization Controls assessment, a Type 2 for security, things like a high trust assessment, anything in the industry that helps govern that third-party vendor. Ask for that information. Don't take it for granted just because they're big and just because everybody's using them that they're going to be okay. And we talked about the incidents planning, and I'll say it again: test and train. I've got it on my prompt here twice: test and train. You cannot test enough. You cannot train enough. Continuously do that. And when you're testing, you don't always have to pay an organization like us. We're happy to help. In fact, I tell people I've got one of the greatest jobs where I get to try to break into places for a living at times. And there is a certain kind of excitement about that. But you don't have to. You could do that yourself. You could pull in people from one building of your organization to go into another building to see if they can get in and look at things, both from a privacy standpoint. You yourself can deploy white hat tools to bounce against your network to see if there's vulnerabilities. And if so, can they get in? You can do your own email phishing. There's tons of web-based tools out there to do your own email testing to see if people are clicking and then re-educate those. That's completely within your control. There's no excuse that, well, we can't afford it. Look, absolutely, if you have a third party do it, there's a sense of independence that brings to it. It certainly brings some credibility. But if you can't afford a third party, there's no excuse. If you go to the CISA website that's part of the government's new Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, there's tons of free tools you can download on how to test these things and build contingencies. So there's no excuse. You just got to get it done. So those are some basics, and you've likely heard them time and time again from other people. Maybe I've said it with a little more enthusiasm because I'm very passionate about I love what I do for a living. I don't know that it's right there with Major League Baseball because nobody's given me a big ring for what I've done, but I enjoy it every day when I go to work. So from that perspective, that's what you're hearing come out is I really like helping people get past this little piece, and that is, where do I start? What do I do? Am I doing things right? So if you're hearing the same thing over and over again from me and others, and you're not doing those, well, shame on you. That's not an industry issue. That's a personal issue, but you need to take care of it. If you're having challenges, Barry, I want to do this, but I've got these challenges. Call me. As a CIO, CTO, compliance officer, auditor, consultant for the last 30 years, there's a lot. I've seen a lot of things, and I've seen a lot of workarounds, ways to get things done besides just writing a check. So please give me a call, have a conversation. Let's talk about what we can do to help you in that sense. So let's talk about the future real quick. I mentioned we're going to talk about the future of cybersecurity and healthcare, and I don't pretend to have a crystal ball and know everything that's going to happen. Okay, but I can tell you a few things. One, we are more interoperable and connected than we've ever been in healthcare before, and we will continue to get so. So there's a term out there called IoT. Stands for the Internet of Things, right? It's all these little pieces. It's not your EMR specifically. It's not your ancillary system. It's all the little pieces that connect to it, okay? It could be wearables. Okay, it could be implants. It could be anything that has electronics to it that sends or receives a signal of any kind that needs to be managed. But you get to it from a remote through the internet protocol. So that means it could be potentially accessible from a bad actor who has access to that same highway. So that's going to get more and more prevalent. If you, again, Google all of the monitoring software that's out there, every one of them are going to have a section on how to protect against Internet of Things, how to do something called what's called zero trust, which is more of a rather than role based, it's a needs based. You can't even see things that you don't have access to. I talk about zero trust in the sense that if I'm a burglar and I turn down a street and there's 30 houses, I'm going to try all the doors, right? And I got to see all 30 houses if I'm working in that neighborhood because I have to know what house to go into. But if the zero trust, my access is limited to one house in that. If a burglar turns down that street and they don't have that access, they see no houses. There's no door to shake. There's no window to rattle because zero trust says it's only visible to those who need access to it. And in an organization, maybe I only need access to two houses on that street. I don't see all 28 of the others. I only see the two. That's zero trust. You should look into it. It's certainly something that's going to help us when it comes to the Internet of Things. And then the biomed pieces, implantables, you're going to see cybersecurity wave come over all that stuff because we are getting more connected with these pieces. You have wearables in healthcare that we've never had before. Well, they're vulnerable. Okay, so that's part of our future when it comes to cybersecurity. I mentioned early on about what's called the cybersecurity performance goals. So this is immediate future, and this just came out this month. So Health and Human Services has published the voluntary cybersecurity performance goals. You need to check this out because it's a lot of self-paced stuff. You're going to see in writing a lot of the stuff that I just talked about. Okay. And you're going to get some good insight ideas on what the federal government is setting out there as goals. Now, consider it this way. What they're putting out there as goals today may be a compliance requirement in the future. All right. I'm not predicting that. I'm not saying I've heard that. I'm simply saying they put a lot of time and energy into setting these goals. Right now, they're voluntary. Okay. So let's say that it's a test or a pilot. Let's see what happens. I suggest you go look at those. And as you're building your cybersecurity profile and plan for the future, I think you should include these cybersecurity performance goals in that plan. And very good information. You can simply Google. Here it is. Cybersecurity Performance Goals, HHS. If you Google that, you're going to hit the website. There's a slide deck that'll come with this likely, and I'll have it outlined in the slide deck. So if you're not writing this down, that's okay. You don't have to just pay attention to the stuff that's up here. There is a slide deck, and it'll likely go out with this. One of the other things that I think is interesting and what's coming is it's a different type of phishing. We've seen email phishing, and there's different types. There's whale phishing, which is we're targeting CEOs, compliance officers, IT professionals that have, lots of access to systems. And if we get their ID and credentials, it's the whale, right? We've got spear phishing, so we're looking for a by name. We're going after Barry specifically for this reason, spear phishing. We've seen smishing, right, which is texting, SMS phishing. We've seen phishing with phones. We've seen all kinds. Now there's angler phishing is what it's being called, and it's called angler phishing. And angler phishing is really using social media to do the phishing. And it may be people that are responding to your post. For example, if I were to put a program together as a bad actor, in this case it'd be a white hat. I'm doing it for good to train and test. and I'm targeting you in a spear phishing campaign, what I may do is a bit of angler fishing there is I know that you post things on Facebook Marketplace. And all I really want to do is buy something. I may pay $100 for something just to get a relationship with you. And then I may build that relationship to get in more information from you. And I may send you something that says, hey, now that we're friends, hey, check this out. Take a look at this. You're going to love this since you're into this kind of industry. You're into music or you're into cars. Click this. And when you click that, I've sent you a payload. Okay, so it's a campaign. It's espionage. It's I'm befriending you through your social media, and all I really want to do is put a keylogger on your phone. So the next time you log in to your company email with your ID and your password, it sends me that and says, "Hey, here's an ID and a password." I'm going to take that, go to the website, and I'm going to try to log into your system. If you've got multi-factor authentication turned on, I've wasted my time. If you don't have multi-factor authentication turned on, I've just explained to you an extremely easy way. Take about a week or two. I can access to your system and I will be in whatever that person has access to, I will have access to, as will a bad actor. So angler fishing is going to get more detailed. And with AI, it doesn't matter if I speak your language anymore. And it's going to be harder to pick up the fact that I don't speak your language because AI is giving me not only in text form, exactly your dialect. I can sound like I'm from any region in the United States. Okay. I can use words like you guys, and I'm from the West, right? I can say things like privacy or mobile, all these kind of things. I'm from the UK. So with AI, bad actors have tools, and there's a couple out there. We talk about ChatGPT. So again, future of cybersecurity. So this is on the defensive side of it as well as kind of the attack side. There are two forms of GPT out there, right? And you guys, it's in the news. Everybody's chat GPT, AI. We won't get into the whole AI discussion. That's another seminar. Happy to do that. But with the GPT, there's two. There's Worm GPT and Fraud GPT. One of those actually helps bad actors produce code to help attack systems. The other one really helps bad actors be more human or more local or geographical in their attack. So there's AI software that not only will in text but also in voice mimic somebody else. And I have no clue what your language is. I don't have to speak the first word of your language. I can put my language in there and have it come across as if I'm a native in your country. Okay, that I've been living there my whole life. Those are harder to spot. So you're going to see angler fishing through social media using AI to do that. So the other part, since we're on the AI, and I'll finish up here. I think we're about to run out of time. The other part of the AI is that AI is available for you in a defensive posture as well. So there are tools, and again, you can Google, AI used for network monitoring, defense, cybersecurity defense, and you'll get a myriad of clients or vendors out there. Again, we don't necessarily promote vendors; we remain independent in all these. So if you want your vendor checked out, we're happy to do that. But there are a lot of vendors out there, big names that have products already. They've either purchased it or they've developed it, but they're using AI to do things to help protect against. So we go back to the beginning of the conversation. One of the sins that I see a lot of people committing is you have monitoring turns on, but you really don't have anybody to monitor that. The most common reason is I'm a small organization. I've got 2 IT people. I've got 4 IT people. I've got 8 IT people. I don't have I'm trying to just keep the system going. I'm trying to keep patients happy. I'm trying to keep physicians, nurses, administration happy. I don't have time to sit there and read these logs. Well, with the new tools with AI, the AI can assist with that. Now, AI is likely going to bubble all those up and say, look at these 3, this is something, or AI may alert you. So AI is going to help us in that sense. And is it true AI? Again, we can have an engineering discussion on what true artificial intelligence is. And by the way, artificial intelligence goes back to the late 60s. It's nothing new. What you're seeing is, in my opinion, more machine learning around large language modeling, but it's automated assistance. Had recently listened to locally Dr. Parks, Lynn Parks from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, who heads up all their AI, R&D, and education at UT, came and spoke. And one of the things that she had said was, people ask the question, is AI going to replace jobs? And her comment is no, but people who understand AI may replace jobs. So it's about adopting AI in the industry, and institutions like the University of Tennessee, Knoxville are developing degree programs. I think you two will probably have one this fall where you can actually get a degree in artificial intelligence. And the cybersecurity is going to be a thread likely in all those. But AI and cybersecurity is a real thing. If you're not using it, you should check it out. It's more than just, large language modeling. It's more than just writing a paper without having to pick up a pen. It's more than creating a piece of art that never existed. AI has some very useful tools, especially in cybersecurity, on taking massive amounts of data, making sense of it, and saying, of the 200,000 lines in this report, you need to focus on these 30 lines because we think this could be significant to your organization. So embrace AI. So there we've covered a few things. What's in the news? We've talked about the landscape a bit, and it's a little bumpier than we started out. And we've talked about some things that you could be doing. And again, I go back and point to two things there. One is the cybersecurity performance goals. Go check that out, and then go check out CISA, Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency. Look at their tools that you can use. They're free. We talked about the future and what can happen and things that are happening. Just know that there's audits coming in the future. So cybersecurity, there is a compliance piece of it you have to pay attention to. It's not all just about trying to stay out of the newspaper, which is a big piece of it, but there are some compliance pieces you need to stay involved with as well. So again, my name is Barry Mathis. I'm a principal with PYA. It has been a pleasure sharing with you some of my thoughts today around cybersecurity and the changing landscape today and the future. If you have any questions, my contact information will be posted here at the end of this presentation. Feel free to call me. Again, if you still have questions around what you should be doing, or you just want some kind of acid test or validation, are we doing the right thing? Give me a call. Happy to help you with that. It's always a pleasure for me. If you're getting better with your cybersecurity, then I feel like my contribution is being recognized, and it makes me feel better as well. So have a wonderful day, and once again, thank you for your attention.
Thank you for listening to this PYA webinar recast. The video recording, slides, and associated material for this and all PYA webinars are available on our website. If you have any questions or if we can help, please contact us at pyapc.com. Thank you again for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.